I am C-3PO.
Han Solo.
I got him!
You don't know the power of the dark side.
You were the chosen one!
Execute Order 66.
All right, guys, we are back. It is blaster fire o'clock. It is time. So this is going to be a weird one, a weird podcast. Basically, we did our lightsabers podcast, and both Nick and I realized that we left some things out. I mean, it was a fairly long podcast, but we turned off the recording, and then like we texted each other like the same night. We're like, wait a minute, forgot about this and this and this and this. So this is sort of an addendum to our other lightsaber podcast. It might be 20 minutes. It might be an hour and 20 minutes. We don't really know.
Yeah.
We have no notes. We're just going to dive into this and like off the top of our heads, bring up some of this lightsaber material that we forgot.
Yeah.
So,
based on the fact that we feel like there's not that much more to add, it should be pretty short. But based on the fact that we have no notes,
yeah,
who knows where this is going to go?
Yeah, this will be interesting. But I'll leave it to you, Nick, because I think you're probably going to have more to say about this than I do. But there were specific lightsabers from various Jedi that we really didn't get into last time.
Yeah, and then I also wanted to revisit a couple.
Okay.
Just because a couple, like, opinions I had, I don't know. I'm not sure I still feel the same way about certain things, even though this was just like a week ago. I'm not sure I still feel the same way about certain things. Briefly, I want to revisit the Tonfa saber.
Okay.
Because just in case anybody doesn't, like, or was having a hard time picturing what we're talking about, it's not like the saber blade is coming, like, perpendicularly out of a handle along the forearm. It's at the full hilt, the full handle, the full hilt of the thing, with the lightsabers turned off, looks like a nightstick. It looks like a tonfa while the lightsaber's off. Then the blade also comes out from that and then extends further. So we were talking about how the tonfa saber, if wielded backhand, would probably be dangerous to the user. But I was actually thinking about it and like gesture mimicking it in my mind because I don't have a tonfa, but
I bet you were doing it in real life.
Yeah, I was. And I was like, I don't think it would be as dangerous to the user as we thought. I mean, if the hilt extends the full length of the forearm, as long as you don't like do some weird like overextension, you're not going to hit yourself with the blade. But the fact that she doesn't wield it that way anyway kind of makes that irrelevant, but I did want to make that point. But also, the fact that she wields it like in a forehand grip with the blade sticking out forward, like we already talked about, it makes it kind of like a real-world weapon. It's an Indian weapon called a pata, and it was a gauntlet sword. Like they wore it over their hand, and the blade came out straight. So they didn't have to do any wrist manipulation. They just hold their arm out straight, and the sword blade is coming straight out of their arm. That's kind of how this Sith person could have used her tonfa saber, just as we said last time, an extension of her arm. And the fact that lightsabers are cylindrical and don't have edges, she doesn't even have to worry about edge alignment. She can wield it in any direction she wants. It burns and cuts in every direction.
That's true.
So she can just use it legit as an extension of her arm. And she doesn't have to worry about edge alignment. She doesn't have to worry about sticking her wrist so that it's actually sticking out in front of her because it's perpendicular, like because her handle's perpendicular to her arm, it makes the blade parallel with her arm. It's not a bad design.
She can become a windmill, basically, and just run at her opponent, swing her arms.
So, yeah, what she couldn't do is use, like, certain traditional tonfa techniques that are actually from, like, real martial arts with a tonfa where they spin it by that handle, because then she will cut herself in half. So she can't do that. And then you get into a problem with it. Like, if she gets in a saber lock with someone who's wielding a lightsaber, it can freely spin within her hand. you know, and I'm kind of like mimicking this for Alex to see it, and you guys don't see my gesturing, so it might be hard to picture. But like by holding that perpendicular handle, it could make the blade easier to be pushed aside, like because the handle's going to spin in her hand. So there's that issue. But wielding it against non-lightsaber wielding opponents, I think it's actually a great design. And I was kind of crapping on it last time. So I wanted to revisit that.
Well, I feel like for blocking blaster bolts, I mean, that would be pretty simple. I mean, you're just kind of like doing this weird YMCA thing in front of your body.
Yeah, well, she only has one of them.
Okay.
But yeah, maybe she should have two of them.
Yeah, I mean, that would be cool.
But yeah.
I thought in my brain she had two of them.
Did she have two of them?
I don't know. See, now we have to look that up.
Yeah, see, and this is where notes come in handy,
Yeah.
and pre-research comes in handy. But we're kind of just doing this off the cuff here.
Was that the only opinion change you had in 1 week about a particular weapon that we already talked about?
No.
Well, I'm glad you asked.
So I was like, we were talking about Kylo's lightsaber.
Yes.
And the little nubs coming off of it, and the fact that they can't actually be cut off because there's blade inside of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said that just results in the question of why does he have the little nubs at all? And immediately after the podcast, I was like, oh, well, the answer is for hand protection. His hand can't slide up into the perpendicular blades or exhaust things because those nubs are there.
Right.
So those are actually very useful in protecting his hand.
So it's a hand guard for you going into your own blade as opposed to another blade sliding down into your hand.
He couldn't even bring his hand all the way up the handle because his hands would slide into those perpendicular blades. So it allows those perpendicular blades to still be usable as a guard, even though we talked about how it's not really necessary because of the way lightsabers bind. But it can still be used as a proper cross guard from above and not hurt him with his hand sliding up into them from below.
Okay. So
Does that make sense?
yes. No, yeah. Wow, I really didn't even think about Kylo Ren's lightsaber. Never ever to that degree. But that's why we have Nick here.
Because I overthink everything? Yes.
Yes.
I do.
So the moral is that Tonfa sabers and Kylo Ren saber are actually
Not that bad.
not that bad.
They have issues.
They have issues.
Especially the Tonfa saber. It does have issues. But it's not just a bad design. Every design has pros and cons.
But they're more practical than at first glance.
Yes. And then the only other thing I wanted to revisit very briefly, the light whip. I was saying how a whip in a duel is a very terrible weapon because there's like no defense whatsoever.
Yeah.
But then I was thinking about it in terms of a light whip. You don't need to have a means of defense because when you're swinging that thing around, no one can defend against it. I was just thinking about, okay, let's pretend for a moment that you can swing a light whip around and not kill yourself. Let's just pretend that that's something that can happen because you have the Force.
Okay.
No one can defend against that thing. I mean, Luke went and made like in Legends, he made a Shoto lightsaber, an additional shorter lightsaber to go alongside his main lightsaber so that he could defend against it. And it was in a comic, so they didn't have to show it actually being used practically, which is good because I don't think an extra little short lightsaber is going to help you defend from a light whip. I mean, the reason a regular whip sucks as a dueling weapon is because if you don't just like get the perfect whip snap on them, like it's a grabbable weapon. It doesn't, I don't know. All the reasons a regular whip is not a good dueling weapon go out the window when we're talking about a light whip. What are you going to do? That thing's swinging at you. What are you going to do? You're going to die. The reason the light whip is a terrible dueling weapon is because you're going to kill yourself with it.
Now, question, would the whip, when it was lit up, wrap around a lightsaber? Would it stick to it, is what I'm saying? Or would it just kind of...
I was wondering that same thing because we talked about how lightsabers, as Kanan put it in Rebels, are drawn to each other. And we see on screen, they always bind with one another rather than sliding up and down each other and that kind of thing. I wonder if a light whip would behave in the same way. Then I guess if you block with one lightsaber, the light whip gets all wrapped up in it, and it's stuck, bound to, you know, maybe your Shoto, as Luke had made one, and then you can attack with your other weapon.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how it works.
Or you can yank it out of the hand
Right.
of the person whipping you because it's stuck to your lightsaber. You just pull, and you can yank it out of their hand, or I don't know, force pull it. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. So, light whip, very difficult to defend against, but still probably not practical. But I did want to bring that up.
Okay. Yeah. Post previous podcast shower thoughts.
But there were some things that we left out of the previous podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, we talked generally about lightsabers, but like other than the dark saber, there were specific Jedi with specific types of lightsabers, several of them that I thought that we could get into.
Yes.
Because they were very interesting. And a lot of it is in the expanded, not Legends, but far removed from the trilogy and even the prequels. I mean, they're
And some of it might be Legends. I think Visions might even technically be Legends. I know I haven't watched any of Visions, but you have, and I know there's some interesting lightsaber designs in there.
Now, Visions is, I mean, like there's Legend and then there's Legend. Like it's out there. I mean,
it's anime based. So what do you expect?
Yeah,
really?
yeah. So we'll come back to Visions, but like the one that I thought of, and you and I had a whole conversation about it, was super interesting, was Jocasta Nu. And it is not in any of the movies. I mean, she never pulls out a lightsaber in the movies. Jocasta Nu is the librarian, basically the old woman who's in the Jedi archives.
The very annoying lady that says that if it's not in their records, it doesn't exist.
Yes, the very arrogant old lady who lives in the Jedi archives. Her name is Jocasta Nu. And according to a comic, I don't know which comic.
I don't know, some comic where Vader is hunting down and killing Jedi.
Okay, so after Order 66.
I don't remember if it's after
or during.
I don't remember. I'm trying to picture it, and I don't remember if I'm picturing Anakin or if I'm picturing like black suit Vader.
Okay, and then Jocasta Nu whips out this thing.
She whips out a lightsaber rifle. And this is not her like normal means of defense. This is like some Jedi relic that is put away somewhere that she pulls out, and it literally, like, it uses lightsabers as ammo. It doesn't shoot out the saber at them, but like it takes the like I don't even know how to explain how this works because I don't think it is explained. Basically, it takes all the force energy, like all the energy from that crystal that's in that saber, and shoots it out as a bolt, as a blaster bolt through this rifle, and hits. The blaster bolt hits with the power of a lightsaber that has just been like had all of its power for its entire life just shot into this one bolt, because then she like basically like racks the rifle and expels the hilt.
Yeah.
And the lightsaber is spent. That's it. Like its entire lightsabers can exist for centuries and like still be in good condition. Like this took
one shot.
Yes. This took all the power that a lightsaber has for centuries and shoves it into one like nuclear shot.
Do not give it to a stormtrooper.
It's crazy, and we're laughing about it, but it's awesome. It's horribly impractical because we don't just have lightsabers growing on trees. But, in Jocasta Nu's case, all these Jedi are dying. She probably had ample ammo.
Walk around the floor.
There's the whole freaking Jedi temple full of dead Jedi now. I'm surprised I want to see her wearing like a bandolier of just like lightsaber hilts, but it's her ammo for her gun. Anyway, yeah, so she like racks the rifle, which expels the spent lightsaber, and shoves a new lightsaber in there, ready to destroy another lightsaber to kill Vader. It is So metal, and I love it.
Well, it reminded me of like a Death Star. It's a little mini Death Star because it's shooting the energy from the crystal
Right.
as a bolt. So she's that's such a weird thought.
It's just crazy that they had to balance it in some way. It's just crazy that it straight up destroys the lightsaber.
Just a visual of an old lady just fucking racking this gun and then a lightsaber hilt just coming out.
It's like the lady at the beginning of Ratatouille with the shotgun. She's shooting at the rats in the ceiling. That's Jocasta Nu with this rifle. It's this old lady.
She's trying to save the order, dude.
It's great. It's the perfect last ditch effort weapon. Like, because it's so not useful any other time. It is the epitome of a last ditch, your last chance to save everyone kind of weapon. Very neat.
It's what you wish you had when Darth Vader was coming at you.
And yet she still loses.
She still loses.
She still gets killed by Darth. Spoiler alert, she gets killed by Darth Vader.
Oh. You have to be a very good shot.
Yeah. So there's that. What else?
You have Ezra's lightsaber.
Oh, yeah.
So that is a lightsaber, but it's also a blaster.
But it doesn't destroy the kyber crystal the way Jocasta Nu's lightsaber rifle does.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a lightsaber. It's just that the handle is also a gun.
But I think the gun of Ezra's blaster still uses the kyber crystal as its power source.
Okay. See, I haven't watched much of Rebels, so I don't know.
Blasphemous.
But it's, don't worry, I'm going to get there because that content's becoming more and more important.
Yeah, it is getting pretty relevant now with the Darksaber stuff, but yeah, so because he can't fire the blaster when the blade is out, he has to turn the blade off, and then he can fire the blaster, and the blaster bolts are the same color of his lightsaber blade.
Interesting.
So it must use the crystal as its power source.
But you don't have one shot.
But you don't have one shot because it's not so powerful that it destroys it. But it's actually, I think it's really cool because, so what Kanan has to do during Rebels, because, the Jedi are being hunted, he actually wears his lightsaber in like 3 different pieces. Like he has like the emitter, and then the like centerpiece of the handle, and the pommel, like in 3 different pieces on his belt. And it almost makes his belt look like a utility belt. Mm-hmm. It doesn't look like it's 3 pieces of a lightsaber. And then when it's time to like fight, he grabs the pieces off, and he's like very quick at assembling it. He just goes click, 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 and now he has his lightsaber. Ezra can wear his lightsaber freely because it's a blaster.
It just looks like a gun.
So when someone, and I mean, unfortunately, it doesn't look that much like a gun. But if someone were to ask him, if some Imperial officer or stormtrooper was to ask him, hey, what kind of weapon is that? Oh, it's my gun. And he could actually show them that it fires. And he's not going to out himself as a Jedi. It's pretty fitting in the context.
Well, that was my question. I'm like, why would, other than because it's cool and maybe because it was a kid's show, why would someone create a combination blaster and lightsaber? But it sounds like you answered it, is that it's sort of for being able to hide it.
Yeah.
And being able to use it on a whim. And because at that time in the Star Wars timeline, the Jedi are being hunted after Order 66.
Yeah, well, and they clearly don't have this opinion that Obi-Wan had about, blasters being so uncivilized.
Yeah.
Kanan actually carries his lightsaber. Kanan also carries a blaster, and most of the time in most conflicts uses a blaster to avoid people knowing he's a Jedi.
That's so interesting.
This just allowed Ezra to be able to do that without having to hold 2 different things. I mean, he can, quicker than Kanan, switch back and forth between the 2 weapons at literally the flip of a switch. Kanan has to grab the other weapon, and Ezra doesn't. And there are multiple times throughout the series where we see him switch back and forth and, win because of it, because he's able to, fight both hand-to-hand and ranged in the blink of an eye. So
yeah, and me, I'm very critical of like weird and just outlandish uses of the Force and of particular weapons that have been established as only operating in a certain way to that point. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm old school or whatever, but in this case, it does make more sense because if they're trying to hide and they don't want to be identified as Jedi, then they have to adapt.
Yeah.
Basically. And in Fallen Order, Cal Kestis, he just has his lightsaber on him and they immediately find him. You know, like they kind of come out. I don't know if you remember this cutscene, but he's like there standing in line and the Inquisitors come in and Cal Kestis, he just pulls out his lightsaber, you know, like.
I seem to remember him wearing it in a hidden place though, like underneath a cloak or something.
I mean, yeah, he doesn't have it hanging out, but it's not in pieces.
Right.
And it's not a gun. I mean.
And his lightsaber hilt, while we're talking about lightsabers, talking about Cal Kestis' lightsaber hilt, it's actually longer than most people's lightsaber hilts. I mean, if you look at it in his hand, you could almost fit 3 hands on it.
Yeah.
So his not being able to be broken down into pieces, it really makes it hard to hide.
Yeah, well, and he didn't stay hidden.
Right.
And I think that's also the reason, another one we didn't talk about, which is Palpatine. He has a lightsaber where the hilt is very short.
Yeah, only one of his hands fits on the handle.
Yeah, he can only operate it with one hand because he needs to be able to conceal it.
Well, and the other part of it is he wielded 2 of them.
Okay, so he had...
So I mean, in Clone Wars, he uses 2 of the same lightsaber. So he never had to put 2 hands on the saber because he had 2 of them.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I don't remember if it was explained or not. I think it is explained somewhere. He loses one of them. So that's why in episode 3, he only has the 1 lightsaber.
Retcon.
Total retcon, because in the real reason, again, always goes back to real stuff. The real reason is in episode 3, the idea of him having 2 lightsabers was not a concept.
Yes, he had 1, and then retroactively they had to be like, oh yeah, he lost 1.
Yes. Yeah, but it's fine because it does give a reason for him having such a small hilt, other than the fact that, which I hadn't thought of, he needs to be able to conceal it.
Well, in my research, that's what it said, because he does that move in episode 3 where it comes out of his sleeve.
Oh yeah, and it's like, yeah,
yes,
that's awesome.
And he can do that because it's short. It's this little thing, and he can just he can just out with it. So we have Ezra's, Jocasta Nu, and now Palpatine's.
Yeah. Okay. Here's one thing that actually we hadn't talking about, but I want to talk about it.
Okay. Talking cubed.
Okay, so there were what's referred to as a light club. I don't know if this is canon or not.
I don't know why that's funny to me. A light club.
It's not like a wooden club.
I imagine a caveman.
That's not what it is. Some people also called it a great saber. It's just a huge lightsaber. It's like the blade is both longer and thicker, girthier, if you will, than a regular lightsaber blade, and the handle is larger. It was normally wielded by like larger alien species, like what's his name, Dex. You remember Dex at the cantina?
Yes.
Like people like him that are just like naturally larger species.
Cal Kestis' his master.
Yes.
Remember that big guy?
Sometimes people, like, at least in Legends, I don't know if any of this has been made canon, they had light clubs or great sabers. And again, much larger handle, longer handle, because they had bigger hands. And then the length of the blade is so much longer and thicker. And we discussed that there is weight to the blades. They can't be that heavy still. I mean, we've established there is weight to them, but they still, I mean, it's not like wielding a sword. That's been established. It's not like wielding an actual sword. If we can make lightsaber blades that long, why aren't they always that long?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's why they're not in canon now, because it's just silly. I get it. The bigger person gets a bigger handle, bigger.
It's an ergonomic thing.
Yeah, but if the blades can be just as long as we want them to be,
I mean,
like and they collapse, so we're not worried about like not being able to carry it around. It's not being so large that you can't carry it around. Like especially in like a battlefield context in eras where the Jedi are soldiers, like in the prequels, why did they not give them you know,
30-foot.
you know, it doesn't have to, yeah. but I mean, it doesn't, you know, have to be so long that it endangers, you know, your comrades, but considerably longer, you know, polearm length. You know, in real history, we have the Zweihanders and Montantes or whatever they're called, the huge swords that were basically used as polearms or to combat polearms. They could have done that with lightsabers and chose not to. That's why it's a silly thing.
I mean, is it totally theorizing? I mean, just because they'd be more of a threat to their allies because they're swinging this longer blade around, or to themselves, maybe because it's longer?
I mean, maybe, but you know, going back to real world context, that wasn't a problem with like knights wielding Zweihanders in history. They weren't worried about accidentally hitting their you know, people in line with them. It was a longer weapon, so they could have longer reach. Reach is an advantage in hand-to-hand combat, always.
Yeah.
The fact they didn't, you know, I understand it in eras where the Jedi are not soldiers, because they're going to be, you know, traveling in more diplomatic situations where it's really just that added like self-defense tool for when it was needed. And if you're, you know, on a diplomatic mission in a meeting with someone and things become hostile and you're in a room, like a meeting room somewhere, you can't just have this 20-foot long blade come out and just wreck the walls and everything. But in a battlefield context, there's no reason they didn't have that. If that's a canon idea, there's no reason everyone didn't have like longer blades.
Well, historically, and this is just more theorizing, the Jedi are not soldiers. So in theory, they shouldn't need something like that because they're only used in a situation in which they're on guard duty.
Yes, well, and according to Yoda in the original trilogy, that is true. But according to Elzar in the 2020 comic, they're soldiers when they need to be. And I mean, we see that in the prequel era, you know, and then we start asking the question of, did they really need to be in the prequel era? But nevertheless, they were.
Yeah.
There are eras where they are soldiers. When they waged war on the Mandalorians, you know, they were soldiers. Why do they not have longer saber blades if that's just something that can be slapped into any lightsaber?
Yeah, I mean, how many droids could they wreck?
Yeah.
With these giant lightsabers.
Again, there has to be some sort of length limit because we've established that they do have weight to them.
Yeah.
So the longer it gets, you know, the heavier it becomes.
we should all have long ones. They work better.
Anyway.
Okay. So
it's all about the girth.
Okay. This is what happens when we don't have notes.
Yes.
This is where our brains go.
Okay. I did want to mention a quick thing about Tera Sinube's lightsaber.
Okay, and who is Tera Sinube?
He is the turtle-looking dude that Ahsoka goes on that one mission with in Clone Wars. He's like the old dude that has a cane lightsaber. I wish I could like say which episode it is.
I remember that. She loses her lightsaber and they have to go find it.
Yes. And Tera Sinube helps her do it because he's like a master, or not. He like has a whole bunch of knowledge on the Coruscant underworld. So he helps her track it down. So many people, I've seen so many discussions about it online, think Tera Sinube's lightsaber is white. It has this very light blue hue to the outside of the saber. Some people have argued that that's just so we can have a definitive like end point to the saber rather than outlining it in black, because that would look weird. They outline it in this very light blue. Mm-hmm. No, it's not a white lightsaber. I found an interview with Dave Filoni. Again, it's a written interview, but it was in like an actual like published thing. That's not just it's a credible source. And if I remember to, which I might not, but if I remember to, I can post a link to it on the Discord once that's up.
Okay.
Or a screenshot of it, whatever. He says Tera Sinube's lightsaber is a very light blue.
Okay.
And I just wanted to make that clear because I I don't know if I said this in the last podcast or not, the previous lightsaber podcast or not. I might have. That the first time we see white lightsabers is Ahsoka's. And people have argued that no, the first time we see white lightsabers is, or a white lightsaber is Tera Sinube's lightsaber. It's not, according to Dave Filoni, it is a very light blue.
Not white.
Not white.
Light blue.
Light blue. Every once in a while, a very weird color pops into a lightsaber crystal, whether it's purple or yellow or very, very light blue. There are the rare colors out there. That's one of them.
Right. I wonder what that is, where they're real world answer. They want to have something different. They want to have a different kind of lightsaber, so on and so forth. What about Tera Sinube's energy made this very unique? Because, we talked about why their colors are what they are. I mean, is this what turtles make?
Right. Because, they kind of abandoned the whole, different lightsaber colors are representative of different roles in the Order. I mean, Qui-Gon's demeanor and everything about him is nothing like Ahsoka's.
Yeah.
And they have the same lightsaber color, So what about their energy made it green? The real answer is Obi-Wan and Anakin already had blue lightsabers. They're going to throw in this third Jedi with them. He's going to run around with them all the time. It's going to be too much blue. Let's give her a green one.
Yeah.
And then they make her short lightsaber, her second one, like a yellow green. It's not just straight up green. It's like yellow green.
Yeah.
They just wanted
it to be different.
Yeah. And I'm kind of okay with not having such an in-depth explanation. Legends felt the need to over-explain everything. I'm fine just having to be like, yeah, well, that's the color that popped into the crystal. Crystals are a natural thing grown in nature by the Force. Different flowers grow as different colors, and we don't question why.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, crystals just don't show their color until they're attached to a Jedi. But that doesn't mean they have the color for necessarily a specific reason.
Yeah.
That's the way I'm taking it. And just some are considerably more rare than others, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah. You told me that you did have some comments about Ahsoka's lightsabers going from green to blue after Anakin gave them back to her.
Yeah.
Right? In season 7?
Yeah, because the reason they did that... Okay, so Anakin gives Ahsoka's lightsabers back to her when she shows back up to Anakin in season 7. And when she turns them on, or right before she turns them on, Anakin says something along the lines of, I made some improvements to them. And she turns them on and they're now blue instead of green. And she just gives him this look like the same kind of look she would have given him back in the day when they were master and apprentice.
Yeah.
The whole point of that scene was to show that Anakin was still thinking about her. He didn't just take her lightsabers and put them in a box and forget about them. He had been tinkering with them to the point that he changed their color because he was always thinking about her. He liked blue lightsabers. He was, I'm gonna make her lightsabers blue. And then she could give him that look, and things could be all like they used to be before everything goes to crap and Order 66 happens. It's a great scene. That's why they did it. But then someone asked Dave Filoni, or I think it was Dave Filoni. Someone asked somebody, whoever was in charge of making that decision, how Anakin changed her lightsabers to blue, because he didn't go and get more crystals. That's not a thing that's not a thing anymore. Jedi can just run to a cave and get more crystals. They have to go through that whole ritual thing. And you can't change an existing crystal's color, as far as we know in canon. And Dave Filoni gave a very cop-out answer that's kind of annoying, but whatever. Where he's just like, oh, well, Anakin knows, and I swear, this is almost word for word. He's like, oh, Anakin knows, enough about the lightsabers and their crystals that he could, change their angle or alter their frequency to show a different color. That doesn't make any sense. Nothing about what you said just made sense. And that was just his way of saying, don't worry about it.
Yeah, pretty much. We just wanted this moment.
We wanted this moment to happen. Don't worry about it. Don't overthink it. I think that was his point. I think he purposefully did not make sense. Just so that he could be like, don't worry about it. We wanted this scene to happen. It's a beautiful scene. Focus on that. And I was a little annoyed at first, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it because it does make for a good scene.
Well, when we are very well-known, famous podcasters, I would just like to reiterate that Nick just called Dave Filoni annoying.
Hey, Dave Filoni is one of the best things to happen to Star Wars.
I agree.
Just because he had a brief annoying moment does not change my opinion of that great man.
He is a great man.
That's really everything I wanted to talk about and revisit, but you do know about Visions and I do not, so let's talk about that.
Okay, so Nick has not seen Visions. Visions, for those who haven't seen it, it's 9 anime shorts based on Star Wars. It's not even in the Star Wars universe. I want to make that clear. It's not even in the universe.
Really?
It's not.
They're not like, they don't call themselves Jedi? Or?
They are.
Okay.
But they don't, like I said, there's legends, but I mean, I guess it.
Okay, so it's like it's in the Star Wars multiverse, but not in the universe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah. So there are some very interesting lightsabers in Visions that are just like if 2 kids were talking about what weird thing, the weirdest lightsaber you could think of. That's what we're going to put in the show.
Didn't you say that there's some weird like Mary Poppins umbrella thing?
Yes. So
we talked about the Inquisitors being Mary Poppins.
Yes. And this
is another level.
This is even more Mary Poppins because it is a female Sith who jumps off of a building top. And so, okay, so the way this thing works is that and it's the first thing you see when she's up on this building, she opens this parasail, basically, this parasol, and out of the spokes, that surround the top of this umbrella, there's no like actual umbrella piece. It's just the spokes. And on the ends of it are lightsaber blades that come out of each spoke. And she jumps off the building and it spins extremely fast and she glides down. Somebody is shooting blaster fire at her. The top of her parasol is spinning ridiculously fast, like way faster than an Inquisitor's would spin. And it's just, totally reflecting everything. At one point, she impales this dude. So she kind of closes it. It turns off. She impales this dude through the chest and then turns it on and opens it so that it fans out across his body and just cuts him, like dices him up like a pizza, basically. It's pretty hardcore. Like, it's crazy. Like, this is, you got to watch this. It's really,
wow.
Yeah. And so then she pulls it apart in the middle. So the blades retract out of the top of the parasol, and then the blade comes out of the handle, and then she has a single bladed lightsaber, and then she throws the top piece away. It's like this metal part, and she throws that away, and now she has a single bladed lightsaber.
Throw that away? Doesn't she need that?
It's Visions, dude. She does. She throws it away, and it's just hanging out on the side, and she just.
And then she has a regular lightsaber.
Well, it's the reason, narratively speaking, is that she has to duel with another Jedi, quote unquote Jedi, in this universe who also has a single blade.
So holding the umbrella piece would just...
It would be totally impractical to duel another single bladed lightsaber with. That's why she does it.
Yeah.
But the person she fights, he is just a samurai. Like, you can't even say he's like a samurai. He is a samurai. And he pulls it out of the side of his hip, just as the samurai wear their swords. They have the shoto and then the longer one. And he pulls it out. And as he's pulling it out, the blade is coming out. So it looks like he's drawing the blade, the lightsaber blade, from the sheath. Exactly. But it's that as he's pulling the hilt out, the blade is extending. It is exactly a samurai. The only difference is that his blade is light instead of metal. That is the only difference. But he is a samurai. That's crazy. Yes. That's awesome. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. So when he puts it away, does he put it away the same way, or can he shut it off and then just reattach the handle, or does he have to turn it off that way? Does he have to sheath it? I think literally he sheaths it and the blade goes away. That is interesting. That's how, yeah, it's really out there, man. This really is like just like you said, like kids, just coming up with, I'm going to have my character have
have a samurai sword that's a lightsaber. Well, my character's going to have an umbrella that's a whole bunch of lightsabers.
That's pretty much what
But how
it
are
is.
you going to fight my guy who has a lightsaber? Well, I'll take the handle off my umbrella, and then it'll be a regular lightsaber too.
And then I can fight you. I just want to say we're not making fun of these artists. I mean, it's just
No, it's just it's outrageous. Not,
Yes.
but not in a. There's no way these artists don't also know it's outrageous.
Yeah.
Like we're laughing at how outrageous it is, but that doesn't make it bad content at all. It sounds like now I want to watch it.
Yeah.
Like so we're not making fun of it as much as we're just laughing at how crazy it is.
it's just, yes, it's like over the top doesn't even describe what it is. There's another one because they each have a title for each little episode. One of them is called The Twins, and it's about these two Force-sensitive twins, a boy and a girl, and they end up having this epic lightsaber battle. You can't even really call them lightsabers by the time it gets to like the final epic battle. Barring the fact that they're in space on a Star Destroyer without any kind of suit, they're just standing in space on the superstructure of this Star Destroyer fighting each other. They didn't never explain it. They're just
Nice.
Yes. At one point, the female twins, if you want to call it lightsaber, they're like tentacles that come out of her back. They come out in all directions, like 6 or 8 of them, almost like a spider. And it's lightsaber energy, if you want to call
Are
it
they
that.
flexible?
They
a
are
whole bunch of
flexible.
light whips?
They whip, and they intertwine with the other twins, and it looks like a peppermint stick. So they're literally intertwined. The blades are flexible and soft, and they twirl up with each other, and they're literally bound together.
This is so Japanese.
This
is so anime.
This is so, yes. Bro, do you even hentai? So,
Oh God.
yeah. And it's like, it is so over the top, dude. Like at one point, they cut a Star Destroyer in half with a lightsaber. Like it is, I can't even.
So safe to say this is never going to be canon.
This is never, but.
This
no,
is like a what if.
This is basically, yes. And I love that because everybody knows what it is. We know this is completely ridiculous. We're doing it just because we're going to do it.
Just because it's fun.
Just because it's fun.
Enjoy.
And it is fun. As long as you take it that way, they're enjoyable. You know, it really doesn't have anything to do with reality as it exists in Star Wars. The other thing, there's another episode called The Ninth Jedi. This is a very interesting concept, and this actually connects with what we had been talking about in the previous lightsaber podcast, which is why colors are what they are or what they aren't. But it even takes it a step further. Basically, in this episode, it is supposedly far into the future after the Jedi are no more, and there's a person trying to reconstitute the Jedi Order, and he's basically sends out this message for everyone to come to his location, and he has these lightsabers. And the person making these lightsabers, it's like a father and a daughter. The daughter is like the main character. She can't be more than like 10 or 11 years old. But her father creates these lightsabers, and he explains to her, he's like, I created the crystals in such a way that they react to the wielder. And she picks up a lightsaber and she flicks it on, and it's like gray, translucent. It's short, and then it gets longer, and then it gets shorter. And it's because she's not fully trained. It's because she's not strong enough to make it like a color yet. And so as the story goes on, she kind of learns, and there's this point where she's in this battle with this other force wielder, this Sith, and it's like this burst of energy where she basically like reaches her full potential, and then her lightsaber flicks on green because the lightsaber reacted to her becoming more powerful, and it turned into a real lightsaber right at that moment. And it's the same thing with the color. All these Sith pop up, and you only know that it is them because they all flick them on and they're red. Someone kills that Sith, takes his lightsaber, it comes out green because the wielder is now a Jedi. It changes the color instantly because the crystal senses who is wielding it, and it changes length, it changes color, like whether or not it's translucent or solid, it all changes instantly as soon as someone grabs it with a different energy. So a lot of people, I've seen discussions about this, they're like, that's what it should be. That's what it's supposed to be. The crystal is directly reflecting the user's energy. And there's even a point, which I thought was really cool, it's like this fight between a couple of good guys and some bad guys. And one of the Jedi starts giving into his anger, and his lightsaber color changes. And then he kind of like, whoa, my anger almost got the better of me. And then it comes back to like purple, which is his normal color.
That's cool. It could actually be like a reminder, like to not think what you're thinking. Like, your lightsaber's going red. Crap, my lightsaber's going red. I gotta not think this way. I gotta correct myself.
Yeah, micro meditate.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was the whole like mechanic or whatever you want to call it that was in that one episode, and that was it. And I thought that was so cool. And a bunch of people are like, yeah, that's a good idea. Just intuitively, we feel like that's how they should work. But that's not how it is in canon.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really cool if they worked that way, but it would make some things not make sense at all. Like Han cutting open the Tauntaun. He wouldn't have even been able to use the lightsaber if lightsabers worked that way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people are being like, yeah, this is how it should be. Well, this is, I mean, not if you want the original trilogy to work.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Luke was completely untrained when he turns on the lightsaber for the first time in episode 4. He's just a farm boy. He turns it on and it's full power.
I mean, yeah, it would conflict with.
Yeah, so I wouldn't go as far as to say that this is how it should be, because anything that should be would not conflict with the first movies, especially.
Well, I will add this point that even in this episode of this crazy show, they made a point to say that this particular swordsmith created these specifically to be like this. So he said, I made these crystals to do this particular thing.
Okay.
So it's like a specific kind of kyber crystal that he somehow came up with to make these interesting lightsabers. That's
really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, huh? You should watch them.
Yeah. Now I need to, because that's all super cool.
Yeah.
Even the Mary Poppins thing sounds cool. I mean, it sounds outrageous, but it sounds cool. I mean,
the animation is amazing. Like, it's really cool. Even for that reason alone, my fiance and I watched them. And I mean, she enjoyed it because, she likes anime and she liked it. Even if you're not really into Star Wars, like it's anime. So it just so happens to be Star Wars inspired.
Yeah. I actually bet Visions could be used to introduce some anime fans that are not Star Wars fans to Star Wars.
Well, and the thing is that it was such an easy transition because Star Wars takes so many elements from Japanese, and like Eastern culture. George Lucas was influenced by all that stuff when he made it. So it's a very easy transition between those two things.
Right.
So, I mean, I liked it. I think most people liked it. Again, you just have to go into it being like, okay, this is just going to be what it is, over the top, like a what if kind of a thing. But it's cool. I mean, I thought it was cool.
So there's one other lightsaber thing that I'd like to talk about.
Okay.
But it's kind of a spoiler for the Master and Apprentice book. So, okay, are there any other things we were going to talk about?
I don't know. I don't think I really had anything else.
Okay, so we'll say that if you are planning on reading Master and Apprentice and do not want a spoiler, we can stop it there. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening, people who don't want to be spoiled. Cue music.
because this is going to be the last. This is going to be the last.
What if I don't want
of
to
the
be
podcast.
spoiled?
Oh, are you going to read Master and Apprentice?
I was planning on it.
Forget it. There's some interesting stuff with lightsabers and colon crystals. Not colon like COLON. KOHLEN colon crystals.
When I get older, I think I'm going to have some of those.
It's like instead of getting kidney stones, you get colon crystals.
Yes.
Okay, well, in that case, then I'm not going to talk about it at all. But I do recommend reading Master and Apprentice. They do something interesting with colon crystals.
Okay.
And they're not kyber crystals. They're known as fool's kyber. They have some, but they do have some interesting. They have some interesting effects when up against a kyber crystal. And I will leave it there. If you want to do your own research, you can. If you want to read the book, highly recommend. Probably my favorite Star Wars book as of right now. Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray. Go read it.
Okay. Well, yes, I am definitely going to read that book. And then at some point, we will talk about this again because I am going to read it.
Cool.
And then everyone else, hopefully, every single person who's listening to this will have read the book.
Hopefully.
Yes.
And if not, then we'll have that whole preface all over again. Don't listen to this next part. Yeah, but.
All right. Well, I mean, if you don't have anything else, there's an hour.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So what?
All right. Well, I mean, after editing, we'll see how long it really is, but that's still longer than I thought it was going to be.
That's what she said.
Yes, it is.
So, all right. Well, I had fun. That was cool. Do we know what we're going to talk about? And have we talked about?
I mean, I can think of a couple things, and we could talk about the sequels because that's a very large topic. We could talk about Ahsoka. I know that's something that we've decided we're definitely going to talk about. Just don't know when.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
So we'll say we are in our next podcast either going to talk about the sequels or Ahsoka. Most likely. It could be something else, but it'll probably be one of those two things. So thanks for listening, guys. We will see you next time on one of those two subjects. Later.
Thanks. Bye.